Hello there. I don't have a witty intro idea for this video, so we're just gonna get right into it. Yeah. Welcome back to I Suck at Video Games. In today's video, we are continuing on with our recap review series with the next installation of the Mafia franchise with 2010's Mafia 2. For this video, we will be using the definitive edition released back in 2020 that I erroneously stated was done by Hangar 13. It was actually remastered by D3T Limited, based out of England. At first, I thought I'd never heard of this company, but looking at their website, they've actually done a lot of work on many different titles. They don't develop their own games by the looks of it, but commonly work with bigger studios to remaster games or do ports for different platforms. They've worked on sports titles with EA. They've also worked on PC ports for games like Guardians of the Galaxy, which has been covered on this channel. They also do remastering jobs such as this game, and I'll be honest with you, it's not their best work probably, but we'll discuss that when the review starts. Mafia 2 follows the story of Vito, a Sicilian-born American who lives in the fictional Empire Bay, our stand-in for New York City. The game follows Vito's life during his court-ordered military service and his eventual involvement with organized crime alongside his best friend, Joe Barbaro. We see both men go through ups and downs and deal with the hazards that come with the life of being a mobster. Stop me if you've heard this before. As I've mentioned in the previous video, Mafia 2 is one of my favorite games in the 360 PS3 era. Vito is heralded as one of the best protagonists of that generation as well. Replaying this game through the definitive edition, I expected to just have a blast replaying one of my favorite games, and I thought I would really appreciate the story more now that I'm in my mid-20s and not 13 like I was when I originally played the game. Unfortunately though, that was not the case. As the title suggests, I really look back on this game through rose-colored glasses. Not fully blinded by nostalgia, but definitely misguided. Mafia 2 is still a solid game, I'm not trying to say it's not, but I never played the original. It's just having now played the original game through its own definitive edition, I don't have the same fuzzy feelings about Mafia 2 that I had over a decade ago. I say that because I feel like the game has more issues than I remember. I mean this in terms of its gameplay, but more importantly the plot of the story, as it's just not as strong as I remember. Those are all things we will discuss more at length within this video. So with that being said, this is your standard spoiler warning for this video. As usual, we will be diving into the plot of the game, going through it in chronological order and critiquing the graphics, mechanics, and characters, and of course the story itself. We will just be discussing the main story for this. None of the DLC packs will be discussed in detail. Besides the one that follows Joe Barbaro, they're pointless and kind of bad honestly. They feel like scrapped content that was thrown in haphazardly, so we won't have to worry about them in this video. If you're a fan of the Mafia series, I hope you enjoy the video, and I hope you leave a like on it as well. Maybe even subscribe if you're new here. We still keep growing with every bit of content, so I hope you stick along for the journey. And with that being said, our preamble is finished. We are now ready to begin the video, so pull up a chair, grab yourself a bowl of zuppa de bolo, and let's dig into Mafia 2. The game begins with Vito recounting his journey to America. He was born in Sicily in 1925, and he left for America when he was young with his parents Antonio and Maria, along with his sister Francesca. They moved into a shitty small apartment in Empire Bay and began chasing the American dream. Vito's father got a job working down at the docks doing hard labor, and his mother looked after Vito and his sister. Vito's father worked very hard and didn't make that much money, and just like your stepdad Terry, most of the money went towards booze. Vito, of course, knows very little English, and his mom knew he wasn't going to learn it in a neighborhood full of Italians, so when he sent him to school, he had a little bit of trouble at first until he made a friend in Joseph Barbaro. He and Vito would be minor delinquents in their younger years before slowly ramping up to things like smashing and grabbing jewelry stores. In fact, it's actually the robbing of a jewelry store that gets our plot in motion. The boys are spotted by a cop and give chase. Joe is able to get over a fence into safety, but Vito is not so lucky and he's caught by the police. Vito is processed in Empire Bay, but luckily for him, it happens to be 1943 and World War II was ongoing with the Allied invasion of Sicily around the corner. So the opening combat tutorial is done through this World War II segment, which is very original for this series and is actually one of my favorite parts of the game. I still kind of wish the game had spent a little more time in Sicily during World War II, but that's just me. Operation Husky and a few of these surrounding operations involved with this Allied invasion of Sicily are very interesting to me. Also, I'm a fan of that one Medal of Honor game, Airborne, which also features Operation Husky, so I'm a bit biased. I also recommend reading up on Operation Mincemeat too. Vito and his fellow soldiers working with the resistance make their way up to a town square that is being occupied by fascistas. We see a public execution about to take place and we have to intervene, which kicks off the first combat sequence, which slowly gives the player their tutorial on guns and movement. For a short sequence, it's fun and done pretty well too, in my opinion. There's some good moments throughout it, but in particular towards the end when Vito works his way up to a machine gun nest to take it over and fire upon the town square, and I was mowing them fuckers down. This goes on for some time until Vito and his men are taken out. As Vito awakes, his few remaining squad mates are taken and executed. When it's time for Vito to be executed, there's something happening outside and you hear a muffled voice over a speaker. It cuts outside to show an elderly man sticking out the hatch of an American tank, and he's telling the Italian soldiers to lay down their guns and put them down for their American friends. This actually works, believe it or not, as the man is actually a very powerful local man named Don Calò, the head of the Sicilian mob. I assume all of the local boys knew their families would be affected had they not stood down. Vito's life is saved, and I like this moment because it's a simple but truly effective scene that shows the power of the mob, a great example of show, don't tell. This then transitions into a small jump because now it's close to 2 years later and Vito is being sent home because he was shot and injured. Vito arrives home in Empire Bay and hits the train. He exits to find his old pal Joe Barbaro waiting for him, and he picks him up and drives him home. Joe is driving, so this gives Vito a chance to observe his surroundings and lets the player take in Empire Bay for the first time. It's here that I want to get my first gripe out of the way, and that is that the remastered graphics are not very good, and specifically what I mean is that they're not very consistent. There are specific scenes where I think it looks remarkable, but I did still wish more was done overall. I feel that if extra time was taken to fine-tune the graphics and more specifically some of the character models, it would have been beneficial for everyone. Obviously, it would be beneficial for the players, but I also think if they took like an extra year or two to do this, the bundle could have been released on the 20th anniversary of the game, which would have been special. Some scenes and characters look better than others. Like, for some reason, Derek Pappalardo looks really good graphically in the first scene you meet him. Vito and Joe are also the only character models that I think look much better than before, and their remastered designs are more consistent, probably the most consistent in the game. But anyways, tangent over, back to the story. Joe brings Vito down for a drink to catch up and reminisce and celebrate his arrival back home. Joe is surprised to know that Vito will eventually have to go back to Europe to continue fighting in the war. Joe, who's been doing some work while Vito was away, decides to make a phone call, and just like that, he gets Vito out of his military service. Like I said, I kind of wish the World War II segment was a little longer, but I guess Joe was able to get a falsified document saying Vito had bone spurs or something, and he's gonna stay home. Joe drops Vito off, and when you exit the vehicle, you have to walk through the cold alleys of Empire Bay to make it to your childhood home, and the vibes are pretty good in the moment with some classic Christmas music playing as you walk through the snow to your home. You go see Vito's mom and his sister Frankie, and it's important to note that Vito's dad has been dead for a few years at this point. He actually died while Vito was away during the war. Remember that bit. Your family is of course happy to see you, and your mom is already concerned to hear that you're back to hanging out with Joe and that he somehow got Vito out of his military service. So Vito's mom pleads for him to leave a normal life and get some work down at the docks just like his father did. Naturally though, Vito doesn't really care for that, and he much prefers working with Joe. He goes to bed in his childhood room, and the next morning he takes off for Joe's apartment to see he's living quite nice. Before that though, we step outside to see a man pressing Francesca over some money. This is your hand-to-hand combat tutorial, and there's a lot of brawling within this game. It's the same system as the previous game, but with the added benefit of counter-striking, but that doesn't come into effect till later. Once you beat the shit out of that guy, you get Frankie to tell you what's going on. She reveals to you that Vito's dad had taken out a loan of $2,000 from a loan shark just before he died. So now Vito has that on his mind when he goes to see Joe. Speaking of friendship, we arrive to Joe's apartment. In fact, he's got some ladies over currently, and he's got some action going on, but he gets the ladies to leave as Vito and Joe are going down to meet a man named Giuseppe. Giuseppe is the guy who is forging Vito's papers to get out of the service. We go to his shop and meet Giuseppe and get our hands on the first set of lockpicks. To my knowledge, you only ever need to buy one here, and that's all you need for the rest of the game. You don't have to repurchase them. The lockpicking system in this game is simple and very satisfying to use. You just lift the pins until it turns green and then you press a button to move to the next and then you're done. It's also very satisfying from a sound design perspective. Now with this lockpicking tutorial out of the way, it's time to implement it by stealing a Jefferson Provincial that Vito spotted on the way in. Joe is supposed to be on lookout, but a cop spots you immediately, and now the game will teach you how to escape the law. Much like in the first game, those first few chapters are just tutorials, but they're not meaningless. They have some importance to the plot. In the first game, the tutorial levels were basically the origin of how Tommy got involved with the Salieri family. In this game, you're getting familiar with what Joe's been doing while you were gone, and you're also getting those forged papers that get Vito out of the military and falling into organized crime, in addition to setting up the whole debt angle of the plot. After you escape from the cops, you take the car over to a junkyard to meet Mike Brewski. This game has some more open world features in the game, as there are more avenues for earning money in the game. You can rob stores for the money in the register, you can steal cars to ship at the port, like this is the port of Montreal, or you can steal vehicles and bring them to Mike Brewski, where he either sells them or scraps them in the classic car crusher. So after Joe's coat gets covered in oil courtesy of Mike Brewski, Vito is sent to a nearby neighborhood to steal a vehicle for Mike. Problem is, that car actually belongs to a member of a local gang called the Bombers, so you gotta hop a fence and steal the car. Problem is, people will start shooting at you, so naturally Vito has to put that military training to the test and fend off the attackers to get away with the car. We kill the Bombers, steal the car, and return to Mike and deliver the vehicle. Then Joe and Vito head back to the apartment, and it's very clear early on that Joe is going to be an absolute standout within this game, and he's still easily one of the best parts of this game. I think most people would have Joe Barbaro as like a top 3 to top 5 character in the entire series.
This is bad. We ain't getting out at all. Come on in, let's talk.
You disgusting pig.
Hey, you think I could,
What? Drive, Vito? The roads are icy. You ain't never drove a car before.
Joe, I was driving almost the whole time I was over there.
Yeah, but this ain't no tank, Vito. This is one of the nicest cars money can buy.
I didn't drive a tank, I drove a Jeep.
What the hell's a Jeep? Are you kidding? I don't need no dance moves. I got charm, my friend. Here, I'll give you some of my lines, so maybe you won't have to spend so many nights with Rosie Palm and her 5 sisters. Hey, here's one. Hey, is that a mirror in your pocket? Because I can see myself in your pants. Hey, when you measure 7 soft, you don't have to be good with words. You get my drift?
I always thought it was kind of funny that there was this odd debate I would see online over who people thought voiced Joe Barbaro. I've heard people say it's Vincent Pastore. I think so many people thought he was voiced by Joey Diaz that they had to include him in Mafia 3, but in reality, Joe Barbaro is voiced excellently by Robert Costanzo, who is best known for being the voice of Harvey Bullock across various forms of media, but I best know him as Agent Harry from Total Recall. It's not an amazing emotional performance or anything, but he voices this character so naturally and has some great line deliveries throughout the game that it's no wonder that he became well liked by fans. The next day has Vito going down to the docks to see a man named Derek Pappalardo to see about a job. Derek Pappalardo is also voiced by Robert Costanzo, but he's doing a more gravelly voice, and somehow 13-year-old me never noticed. The best way I can describe meeting Derek for the first time is like meeting an Italian 1940s version of Everard Clare. Just big and condescending and is worrying about his steak getting cold. Luckily though, he gives Vito a job to load some crates into a truck for a whopping $10. You can lift almost as many crates as you want, but you can also quit at any time, and eventually the game will just automatically stop you and force you to leave. On the way out, Steve tells you to get fucked and never show your face around here again, but Vito just happens to mention Joe Barbaro's name, and Steve changes his tune. They bring Vito upstairs and call BS on his connection to Joe and give him a call to double check. It's a tense scene that kind of makes me laugh, because like, are we really going to beat or kill the guy because he said he knew a dude and that dude just happened to not pick up his phone? Like, what if he just wasn't home? Anyways though, luckily Joe picks up the phone and everything is cool. Vito is now tasked with doing some muscle work for Derek. He needs the workers to pay up for the barber, so you have to go down and accost the workers, and some will fight back, so you gotta put some boots to asses to get that cash. This will culminate in Vito having to face off against this guy named Bill, who apparently beat the shit out of Steve before. Vito returns the favor and earns himself some serious money that will go towards paying off that debt. Also, when Vito first mentioned his name to Derek, some of you may have noticed that got Derek's attention. Remember that bit. As Vito goes to leave, Derek stops him to tell him that Joe called back and asked for Vito to meet him at a place called Freddy's Bar. Vito enters Freddy's bar and meets Joe upstairs, and Joe has set up a very important meeting between Vito and a man named Henry Tomasino. You can tell he's going to be important because besides Joe and Vito, he's the only other named character on the front cover of the game. I still don't know who the fuck that guy is. Henry is a made man in the Clemente crime family, one of the big 3 crime families in Empire Bay, and he has a special task for Vito to complete to prove himself and increase his chances at falling in with the Clemente family. Henry explains that he needs Vito to infiltrate a federal building and steal some gas stamps. These are worth a fortune because there's an ongoing gas crisis with the war still going on. Vito seems hesitant at first, but confirms to Henry that he can get it done. Joe won't be accompanying you on this one, but you do have a person on the inside. A woman named Maria Aniello who works in the building and is the sister of one of Clemente's guys. We pick her up and drop her off at a nearby hospital, and she gives us the details. There's a back window that's open for Vito to get in the building, and the stamps are being held in a safe upstairs. The key for the safe is held in the manager's office, both of which are upstairs. They're literally in front of each other. The security detail is minimal, just a handful of guards. It's very simple and easy to infiltrate the building and make your way up to the safe. Honestly, stealth is not a huge part of Mafia 2. Just like the first game though, when you broke into the safe with Salvatore, once you grab the stamps you need, an alarm goes off, triggering an armed response from the remaining guards. So then you gotta grab the gas stamps and dash, run back downstairs and out the window you entered in from. You make your way back to the bar and give the stamps to Henry, who isn't nearly as excited or happy as you expected. It's actually because you kind of fucked up. You grabbed stamps that happen to expire tomorrow, so now you have to hurry and deliver gas stamps to local gas stations before a timer runs out. Also, the driving in this game is leaps and bounds better than the first game. The manufacturing of vehicles and their systems have certainly improved in the 10+ years since the last game setting. The only thing I find annoying about this mission is the fact that the gas station attendants say the same few lines over and over again, and they also all look the same. They're all Irish twins, I imagine. Either that or somebody's father has a lot of explaining to do. You can deliver the stamps pretty easily. All the stops are close by, save for the last few that are across the river. One thing I like about Mafia 2 over Mafia 1 is their world building within Empire Bay. They explain that this city is collaboratively run by a group of families known as the Commission, as they help maintain order and stability among the major crime families within Empire Bay. There's other groups that play a slightly bigger part in the story, but it's usually reserved for one specific moment or chapter in the story, as there's the presence of the Irish mob, greasers, and especially the Chinese mob. Each of those groups make appearances that are connected to big moments in the plot of the story. This doesn't come without its pitfalls, however, but we'll get to that in a bit. The next chapter is entitled Murphy's Law, and as you can see, the framing for Mafia 2 is just like Mafia 1. It utilizes chapters to separate the events of the game. In this one, however, the chapters aren't confined to single events before wrapping up. They have mostly 2 events within them before the chapter ends, and that comps the complaint I had from the first game feeling kind of short. This game does not have that issue. Vito wakes up in the morning to a note from Joe in which he has to meet him at Freddy's, and it's said to bring a piece and some lockpicks. You run over there to find out that Henry has another job for you and Joe this time, and this one's a little more exciting. Clemente had loaned some guy a lump sum of money to open up a jewelry store, but now that guy is failing to pay him back on time. So Luca Guarino orders Henry, who orders Joe and Vito, to break into the mall at night and rob the jewelry store. Vito is understandably hesitant because the last time Vito and Joe robbed a jewelry store, he got apprehended and sent to fight in Sicily. Joe reassures Vito and says this time they even have disguises, so things should go much smoother. However, the job doesn't go smoothly, as shortly after we arrive to the destination and unlock the door and start grabbing jewelry, something interesting occurs.
What the hell is this?
Come on, boys. The cops will be here any minute. Move it!
Ryan fucking O'Neill?
What the fuck is this?
You crazy bastard, what the fuck are you doing?
Barbaro, what the hell are you doing here, you fuck?
You're a little late, Chief. There's nothing left here for
Fuck
you.
off, fatso. This is our heist. You want to get out of here in one piece, you'd better hand over everything you've
Well,
got.
the sign outside didn't say Brian O'Neill's place. If it did, I wouldn't have robbed it.
Ah, that's right. The classic two people plan to rob the store the same night gag. Amazing stuff by the writers. This is one of those key moments where I mentioned that the other groups outside of the three main crime families in Empire Bay become relevant. Here we are introduced to Brian O'Neill and his fellow members of the Irish mob. Of course, they don't take kindly to you being there first, and a bit of a scuffle breaks out and forces Joe and Vito to get away, and that's going to be easier said than done. As they were flapping gums in the store, the cops happen to be in the area and get right into action. So now, what at first seemed like a quick and easy heist is turning into a massive shootout as the Irish and the cops begin firing at each other. Feels like a civil war. Vito and Joe make it to the roof, and after fending off a few more police officers, you have to make a daring trek across a ledge by the main sign of the mall. Keep in mind, this is the middle of the winter, so that's probably slippery as fuck. Vito and Joe make it safely into a nearby alley as you watch Brian O'Neill get arrested and taken away. Joe and Vito then split up and plan to meet back at the apartment, and that's where the chapter will end. The next chapter is entitled The Buzzsaw and is going to keep that forward momentum going with our plot. Vito heads down to Freddy's bar again and meets up with Joe and Henry. Due to the success of their work in getting the jewelry for the Clemente family, we are then introduced to this sack of shit named Luca Guarino. Luca is a capo in the Clemente family, and Luca has a very important task for Vito, Joe, and Henry to undertake. This is a pivotal job for Vito and Joe, as this is the most serious thing they could do for the mob. They have to perform a hit on someone. They give you minimal details because, as Luca puts it, they want guys who will do what the family asks of them, no questions asked. They point, you shoot. To which Vito has a great remark.
I was in the war, Mr. Guarino. All I did was kill people I was told to kill. People the president pointed his finger at.
Luca also adds that if Joe and Vito pull this off, they will likely be initiated into the Clemente family. After paying a fee of $5,000, of course. Nothing serious, nothing fucking big. Not like that's gonna become a problem later in the game. I don't know. Before we leave the bar, we actually get a surprise appearance from Don Clemente himself, who is rather unhappy with Luca here. As he should. Luca fucking sucks. From there, we then have to visit a guy named Harry who runs a gun store in the area. We have to go there and pick up a fucking MG42. How the fuck did you get your hands on an MG42? The war's still going on. Also, not even a Browning? The fuck? Anyways, we meet Harry and his bitchin' eye patch, and he and Vito display some camaraderie after they each discuss their service in the military. Harry says that he served and fought during D-Day, and he was a part of the landing force on Utah Beach. Dude looks pretty old to be storming the beaches of Normandy, but if Teddy Roosevelt Jr. could do it, I guess Harry could have too. After picking up the MG42, the boys then head over to a lookout point where we will have a good opening to take out the designated target. The target is this rotund individual named Sidney Penn, who is actually a former associate of Don Clemente. Clemente had actually invested money in Penn's taxi business and used it to launder his bootlegging money. After a while though, Penn decided to open up a distillery and not share any of the profits with Clemente, so naturally, he has to die. Clemente has actually sent 2 hatchet men to do the job, but both were killed. So, if the boys pull this off, it's a good look. The guys sit in what I assume is an abandoned apartment overlooking the distillery, and the guys do a fucking awful job at not looking suspicious. Because some of the workers notice you, and as soon as the fat man arrives, you guys are made pretty much instantly, and Penn is able to get inside the building. So, you now have to mow down his men outside, and you have to then chase Penn into the building and kill him. Honestly, one of my favorite bits from this mission is that the game takes the chance to show to you, the player, that Joe here is not a pushover either, as he goes full Jason Bourne on some guy at the top of the staircase. The distillery fight as a whole is fun, and the combat in this game is okay. It's good enough without being anything special. It gets the job done just like the previous game. Vito, Joe, and Henry must shoot their way to the top of the distillery, and if you use the shotgun, you can run through the henchmen pretty easily. When you make it to the top, you corner Sidney Penn, and Henry goes to finish the job and send the final message.
Thought about your wife before. Just don't kill me. Oh, for Christ's sake.
Don Clemente sends his regards. Oh. Fuck.
Henry, like Sergio Morello, is still a lucky motherfucker. I thought he got dealt the same hand as Gary Oldman in that one movie and got shot in the dick, but no, he just got shot in the leg. After filling Sidney Penn's belly full of lead like he ate a bowl of pastina, we then have to grab Henry and quickly get out of the burning distillery and have to take him to a man named El Greco.
The fucking painter?
No, the fucking doctor, you
Take it
idiot.
easy. We're gonna get you there in a minute.
El Greco is just the name of a local doctor who happens to be Greek. He looks after wise guys like Henry. There was a similar character in the last game, but he isn't given nearly as much character as El Greco here.
You all Greco the doctor?
No, I'm the fucking painter.
A friend needs help or he's gonna bleed to death.
Thanks, Doc.
Good God,
We
Henry,
owe you one.
get him inside. Hello,
Wait, I got money for you. For the job. Take it.
You know this could have waited, but thanks.
And hey, thanks for everything.
Hope you'll be okay.
Yeah, me too.
I'll stay here with him. Meet me in my place.
All right.
So Henry will be okay, and before he heads inside with El Greco, he gives Vito a wad of cash, and this is the final piece of the $2 grand we need to pay off the debt for our family. Thanks, Dad. Afterwards, Vito then returns home to see his sister and quietly give her the money, and he then departs, saying he wouldn't want his mom to see him and question where he got the money. Rightfully so. This then completes the chapter, and the next chapter, things are going to get much more interesting. The next chapter is called Time Well Spent, time being the operative word because that time is going to be hard time, like jail time, you know? Whatever, you get what I mean in a second, fuck off. The chapter opens with Vito leaving Joe's apartment one cold February morning and is immediately arrested by 3 detectives. Vito is being arrested for selling those federal gas stamps illegally, and it turns out one of the gas station attendants ratted him out, and they eventually track Vito down through his own mother. Some time passes in the process of Vito being in court. It's mentioned that Luca had convinced Clemente to hire a lawyer for Vito, but it did not necessarily do anything for him as he was still sentenced to 10 years. Vito believes the lawyer was just there to ensure that he didn't squeal on other members of the family. So Vito is then sentenced to 10 years in federal prison at Hartman Federal Penitentiary. I actually like what they did here with this scene. As Vito is walked off the bus, it switches into a first-person view when you're walking through the yard, with the inmates yelling at the fresh meat arriving. As you can see, the inmates are already separated into their racial gangs, and of course there's one guy who says, "Oh, I shouldn't be here," and he is promptly beaten by this cop. Vito then enters the prison, gets bathed, gets his head shaved, and is shown to his cell. A few days go by, and Joe was able to get in contact with Vito and tell him to look for a guy named Leo Galante, as he's a fellow mafioso and can possibly help Vito on the inside. You can walk the yard and ask around for Leo, and you can also just look around and just find him eventually. It's not that hard. Pretty much just walk in a straight line, you'll get to where you gotta go. You find him towards the back of the yard, but right as you're about to talk to Leo, fucking crazy Mick Brian O'Neill appears out of nowhere and he jumps Vito. If I'm not mistaken, this fight with Brian O'Neill is unwinnable, so it doesn't really matter how long it goes on for or how much you try. Regardless, the fight gets broken up and Vito gets placed in the hole for solitary confinement, but you have caught the attention of Leo Galante. Later on, Vito is paid a visit by Galante himself while in solitary confinement. It's important to note that Galante hates Clemente and normally does not protect Clemente's guys in prison. Galante is a part of a different family in Empire Bay. He works with Frank Vinci, who you really don't see until like the end of the game. Galante presents Vito with an offer to help him with training his fighters in the prison in exchange for protection inside. That's right, baby, organized prison fights. Initially, Leo just wants Vito to be a sparring partner for this big galoot named Pepe Costa. Pepe has a big fight coming up against Brian O'Neill, and since Vito did pretty well against old Brian in that fight in the yard, he wants him to train Pepe and basically just be a stand-in for Brian. This is where the game will introduce that counter-punching mechanic I talked about earlier. Leo loves himself some counter-punching like he's Teddy Atlas in those old Fight Night video games. Actually, while we're on the subject, fuck Isaac Frost. Once Vito lands a good shot using that new counter-punch mechanic, Leo is taken back by it and instead makes Vito one of his fighters. You get that high praise from Leo, which is a big thing because Leo is said to be a former prize fighter back in the day. After the training session is complete, there's a cutscene that will play where Leo asks Vito about his connection to Clemente. He mentions it was a loose connection at best and really only doing jobs for him through Luca Guarino, to which Pepe says he is surprised Guarino is still alive.
And, Luca said he'd bring us into the family for, $5 grand.
What? Typical fucking Alberto. He's always been a crooked bastard.
So what is that, like more than usual?
Yeah, like $5 grand more than usual.
You don't gotta pay to get in, Vito. You're brought into the family once you prove that you're loyal, a good earner, and you can handle, well, you know, the life. In any case, this is an interesting piece of news. When this gets out, Alberto and Luca are gonna have a lot of explaining to do.
Oh, jeez.
Don't worry about that. We'll talk about it some other time.
So there you have it. The whole $5 grand thing was complete bullshit right from the start. They were just doing it to squeeze money out of what Lucas saw as two wannabe wise guys that don't know no better. That specific cutscene there makes it clear that the title of the chapter has an actual meaning beyond just serving time in jail. It's time well spent because this is where Vito will learn more about what it means to be Mafia like he's playing Mafia City. He's going to learn properly from a man like Leo, and this is a major moment in Vito's life and for the plot going forward. Shortly after this scene, you then get your first challenge in the form of this guy who's a part of the Chinese gang of inmates. The fight itself is fun, it's really whatever, but the best part about it is the background audio of guys talking during the fight.
This not happen if you use tiger style.
After Vito wins the fight, he continues to impress Mr. Galante. A week after beating the Chinese guy, Leo has Vito fight a black guy as they challenged us, and Leo doesn't want Pepe getting hurt before the big O'Neal fight. This fight also includes some humorous dialogue in the background.
Yo, little cracker going down! Oh, this boy got as much chance of winning as a brother running for president.
Now, Vito, grab him and finish him off. All right, kid. Now put his lights out.
Don't worry, Vito, you got him right where you want him.
After winning this fight, Vito is then paid a visit by Francesca, and she tells him that she's getting married, which is super exciting. Oh, Madonna, or whatever the fuck Vito says. But she also lets him know that their mother is getting really sick and isn't getting better. Vito tells her to grab his money from Joe to pay for the best doctor possible and to take the rest of it for a wedding gift, and he is then forced to end the visitation. Outside of the fighting and seeing his family, life in jail has been middling at best for Vito. He has to clean urinals among other chores, and oh, yeah, fuck, I almost forgot about the attempted shower rape in this game.
I like your scars, pretty boy. Where'd you get them?
Sorry, asshole. You picked the wrong ass to drill.
We can do this the easy way, or the hard way. Your choice.
I got a better idea. Why don't you go fuck your buddies instead? Or better yet, go fuck yourself.
Okay, I guess you...
Hold up, is that Stephen Blum? Are you telling me you guys got Stephen Blum in your video game and you got him to voice a prison shower rapist? And one who looks like that, no less? I both hate it and love it at the same time. You win the fight and the prison wallet remains unopened. However, things somehow go from bad to worse. Yes, you almost got sexually assaulted in the shower by 3 dudes and things are somehow going to get worse. His fucking mom died. I tell ya, that's a series of unfortunate events right there. Okay, so this is where I want to talk about my next main issue with this game, something that I've noticed more so now than I did back when I was a kid when I originally played this game. I find that the narrative of this game struggles. Sometimes it struggles to give scenarios like this proper gravity and time to really set in. The way it's written to me is just kind of laughable. Like, that's a serious moment for a character to lose their mother, especially while they are in prison, unable to care for them. And to top it off, you have it happen after an attempted shower rape, and then immediately just move past it and barely bring it up again. It's kind of crazy. Like, all jokes aside, I just feel that the game just rushes through some big moments in the plot and doesn't put enough emphasis on them to make them memorable or make it feel like they really matter in the end. This game is very different from Mafia 1, where the theme of family is paramount. Here, it's clear that the main theme is supposed to be friendship or loyalty, but even that's not done properly in my opinion. Now, you can call this an annoying or even a dumb nitpick, and that's fine. We're all entitled to our own opinions here, but to me, I think you can't make a good Mafia story without family being a key factor involved. Look at basically every popular Mafia story, and hell, even look at the other games in this series. I did mention earlier that Vito's dad was the most relevant family member in the story, but even that isn't done well, and it's not positioned to be important until the very end. The way it's done is just very weak in my opinion. Stuff like this makes it a little harder for me to be invested in the story because nothing is really making me engaged other than hoping Luca Guarino dies a horrible death. But I digress. I'll finish the rant there. You get the point. Family should matter. The next scene after the reveal of Vito's mom dying immediately goes into Vito fighting Brian O'Neill again because the Irish jumped Pepe and now he's got a busted arm, so that fight with O'Neill is not happening. O'Neill is now alone in the gym, and it's time for Vito to settle the score with him. However, this time you're obviously supposed to win the fight with O'Neill, and I'll tell you right now, he's fucking tough as shit. You hit him with everything you've got, including the kitchen sink. Then, after kicking his ass for so long, he'll pull out a knife and attack Vito. Vito is able to fend him off with some knees and then uses the blade to finish off O'Neill. The game then rushes past this moment with a quick little voiceover, and then the game transitions into another pivotal scene between Vito, Leo, and Pepe inside Leo's fancy cell as he's cooking up a meal. Here is where Vito gets more information on the world of organized crime in Empire Bay, and this will become more important when he's back on the outside.
I sure as hell ain't gonna go back to working for Clemente, I can tell you that.
Yeah, you're better off just forgetting about that old bastard. Trust me, Alberto's a real cocksucker, and you can bet that lawyer he's hired was just there to make sure you didn't rat. But don't worry, you'll get his. Letting guys into your family for money like he offered you is against the rules. He's gonna have a lot of explaining to do.
To who? I thought Clemente was the boss.
You obviously don't know how things work around here. You see, there's more than one family in Empire Bay. There's 3. Each family controls their own neighborhoods. There's a system of rules. And if there's any disagreements, the bosses of all the families meet to work things out. That's the commission.
Great, so what do I do now? Am I in trouble too?
No, nothing like that. You're young, you're smart, and you've proven you can keep your mouth shut. You're exactly the type of guy everybody wants working for him.
Yeah, but I don't even know who these other guys are.
There's 2 other bosses besides Clemente. One is Carlo Falcone. The other is Frank Vinci. Carlo is young and ambitious.
The guy's a freaking nut job.
He's new blood, whereas Don Vinci is a man of honor. He respects the old ways.
You know these guys?
Well, you could say that. And Frank Vinci is consigliere. You think being just a regular old man gets you all this? But listen, Vito. I'm getting out in a few months. When I do, you'll see what we can do about adjusting your sentence. Pepe, come here. Have a taste.
Speaking of which, the next chapter includes a near 6-year time jump to Vito being released early from prison thanks to some calls from Leo Galante. And now, after the death of his mom while he was in prison, Vito plans to make good on his word to his mom to be a good man and live an honest life, especially now that he's done prison time, you know? Nah, I'm just fucking with you. The first thing he does is go back to Joe to get back into the life that got him into prison. Also, I have to mention the fact that this game consistently had this weird bug in this specific section of the game where the background track would continue to loop constantly. Like it did it for me months ago when I played the remaster off camera for the first time. I kind of just assumed it was a one-time thing, but nope, it happened when I was recording too, and it's just odd. This one kind of feels like it's on D3T for that. It's just a problem that's really weird, and it will pop up again later as well. As a welcome home gift to Vito, he's got a special night for him planned now that he's out of jail. He brings Vito to his new apartment and even brings him to get a new classy suit because Joe is also introducing an important man to Vito tonight. He's being introduced to this guy, Eddie Scarpa. During the conversation with Joe, he mentions that he's fallen in with the Falcone family, and then later you'll put it together that Eddie is a high-up member in the Falcone family. Eddie and Joe are bringing Vito to the classiest cat house in the city to enjoy the drinks, libations, and celebrate Vito's arrival back home out of prison. After you arrive at the cat house, a very interesting conversation plays out between Eddie, Joe, and Vito because Eddie is telling Vito about his connections with Leo and how this Falcone family is looking to expand and possibly bring in both Joe and Vito as made men. During the conversation, he's getting the old sloppy toppy, if you will. Looks like he's getting some real toe-curling head. I will say it's funny the way it's played into the conversation, specifically through Eddie's stammering and moans, if you will. It's just kind of funny the way it's done. It's hard to explain. But of course, you know, I can't really show it to you but, you know, you can just imagine it. I'll be damned if I'm gonna get taken down because of fucking animated fellatio. I gotta say, that kind of gives I suck at video games a whole different meaning, doesn't it? Before things get too out of hand as the guys start drinking and partying more, Eddie mentions that he can't get too fucked up because he has something to attend to later. Not only does he get super fucked up, I'm talking like borderline Jim Leahy level drunk, and Vito has to take him and Joe home. I'll be honest with you, this mission fucking sucks. I'll just be honest. It has no real value beyond initially meeting Eddie Scarpa to kick off this new act in the story where we will be working with the Falcone family. The rest of the mission, man, the rest of the mission is just the worst nightmare for every designated driver out there, in which Joe and Eddie get into some drunk karaoke with the radio. Also, Eddie pukes in the back seat, and last but not least, there's a rotting corpse in the trunk of the car. And when I say rotting, I mean rotting. This looks like the one body from that one episode of Mr. In Between, but unfortunately I can't launch any of these dudes out the fucking car. The name of the man in the trunk is Frankie Potts, whose full name is Francesco Potenza, which is, you know, the title of this chapter. Eddie was supposed to bury him, but now that he's 2 drinks away from painting himself blue and calling himself the Liquor Snurf, we have to bury the body ourselves. Joe is also fucked up, looking like an Italian Randy Bobandi, and he isn't much help either. Thankfully, though, eventually, after you bury the body, take the guys home, the chapter ends. The next morning, Vito is woken up by some rocks being thrown at his window by a young man named Marty. Vito then goes downstairs to see Joe with Marty alongside this large truck. Turns out Joe and Vito are going to stop around the city and sell some cigarettes. This mission here shares in that same sentiment that was prevalent in the first game, where the early part of the level would lull the player into a false sense of boredom, but then the game takes a turn. By like the second or third place you stop at to sell the cigs, you are happened upon by a group of 1950s greasers. The greasers try intimidating Joe to no avail, so they just torch the truck and Vito has to jump out. This was the wrong move to do. Joe, care to show them why that was the wrong move?
That's right.
Come on, hop in that car and let's go.
So now we have to chase after these guys in their fast cars, in which Joe will still complain about the speed of Vito's driving, to my delight.
What is this, the Indianapolis Speedway?
We give chase to the greasers, but they get away, and we have to make a call to Eddie Scarpa, and he's livid that we were unable to deal with them. We now have to scrounge up $2 grand to pay Eddie back for the truck. Eddie also mentions that Steve from the docks is with him, and they were already thinking about what to do about the greasers. I gotta say, that was fucking fast. Luckily though, Steve knows exactly where these greasers hang out, and that's where Vito and Joe go to meet him. We arrive at the Crazy Horse bar and we collectively shoot the fuck out of it. Joe, Vito, Steve, some other random dudes, and Marty is here too for some reason. The plan is to decimate the bar and then move on to the abandoned foundry nearby, which is their hangout. Just beat the piss out of them, not have a big shootout or anything.
Follow the fucking yellow brick road. Next.
Ha, nice one.
You fuckers are dead.
Joe, watch out!
Thanks, kid.
Shit, they got guns. Let them have it.
So the greasers pull guns and nearly kill Joe were it not for fucking Marty Robbins and the big iron on his hip. So, just like Johnny and Billy in the first game, these guys make the same fatal mistake of shooting us, which kicks off a huge combat sequence. But unlike the first game, nobody survives this. We put all of those greasers into the fucking ground. After wiping the greasers off the face of the earth, Joe then worries about how they're going to pay Eddie back the $2 grand they owe him, but Vito has the genius idea to take one of the greasers' hot rods and sell it to Derek down at the docks, and this works as Vito alone gets almost $2 grand for his car. After you sell it, you give the money to Eddie and then head home to end the chapter. This completes Chapter 8, The Wild Ones, and then begins Chapter 9, which is called Balls and Beans. In this chapter, Vito wakes up to a phone call from Eddie who tells him to head over to the Maltese Falcon, the restaurant that is owned by the Falcone family. When you go there, you get to meet another Don in Don Carlo Falcone, who looks like Discount Al Capone. Falcone and Eddie are trusting Vito with a major task here. Falcone opens up and asks Vito how he feels about Luca Guarino and Alberto Clemente. Vito feels like they tried to rob him of $5 grand and then also leave him to rot in jail, so he has no favorable opinions on them. Falcone lets Vito in on the fact that a car full of their guys was attacked last night and now they're missing. This includes people like Antonio Balsamo, better known as Tony Balls. He's an enforcer in the family, but the real problem is that the accountant for the Falcone family, a guy by the name of Harvey Beans Epstein, has gone missing too. Obviously, we can't have Epstein's list of financial records for the family getting in the hands of Luca Guarino or Clemente, so Vito has to find Luca, tail him to find out where he's going, and see if he has any connections to the disappearance of Balls and Beans. There's also a third guy missing named Frankie the Mick, but for reasons I'll explain in a moment, he doesn't really matter. Vito finds Luca, and you have to follow Luca around town and keep a good distance. Of course, it's a classic tailing mission that was very common in the 2010s. We follow, and Vito has these silly lines of dialogue trying to figure out where Luca is going, and then he's shocked to see him go to the slaughterhouse literally owned by Clemente. Like, yeah, maybe because of Vito's loose connection to the family, he didn't know it existed, but Eddie or Falcone could have mentioned it and really took out the whole tailing part, but it's the early 2010s and tailing missions were still big. So Vito has to infiltrate the slaughterhouse through the sewer system where this happens.
Ah, fuck. If Luca just stopped by to pick up some steaks, I'm gonna kill somebody.
So now Vito is covered in the finest dookie marinade money can buy, and he still has to complete the mission. Vito sneaks his way into the slaughterhouse and notices Luca going into a room where there are some faint, distant screams. You sneak and make your way around to that room, and a cutscene will play because Epstein is still alive, and so is Tony Balls. Frankie the Mick, not so much. Because of his foul stench, Vito is quickly noticed by Luca and his fellow gangsters. Vito tries to jump the shark immediately and confront Luca, which, like, I don't know how he expected that to go, but it doesn't go well. Luca at first doesn't even remember Vito, but then he puts it together on who he is. Vito gets attacked by some big motherfucker and gets his gun knocked out of his hands. Tony Balls is still able to help out by sliding the gun to Vito off screen, and he's able to get the upper hand on Luca's big guy, and this kicks off the next combat sequence once we save Tony Balls and free Epstein from hanging. Tony Balls tells Beans to stay behind while he and Vito take out the rest of the guys in the slaughterhouse and then deal with Luca. You take out some guys in the room and then some reinforcements that come driving in, and then you can confront Luca, who's locked in the office. Tony Balls can't get in, and the door itself is clearly bulletproof, so how do you get in? You ever seen the movie Hot Fuzz where they use a large stack of shopping carts to ram into the deli counter? Same idea. Tony and Vito grab a large cart and gain momentum and break the door right down and grab Luca, who immediately begins squirming for his life. Tony plans to slowly torture him and get payback for what he did not only to him and Beans, but more importantly Frankie the Mick.
Open the door, it's all over.
You're still alive?
Yeah, what'd you expect? Look, before we go home, you want to give me a hand with Sleeping Beauty here?
You know, that's not such a bad idea.
Beans is going to do some heinous things to Luca, judging by that look he gives Tony. So, somebody keep an eye on that guy, eh? Vito then leaves and goes to bring Eddie the good news, and he hates the smell of you, so he tells you to go change and get some new clothes. Once you do that and get freshened up, you head back to the Maltese Falcon because today is the day. After all this time, Vito is finally going to become a made man, but this time in the Falcone family. Leo Galante is even here to share in the celebration with Vito. Here we see what I assume is a proper initiation into the family. We also get an appearance from the third crime boss in Empire Bay, Frank Vinci. Vinci wishes luck on Vito and Joe as he mentions the cardinal rule of being in the mob is not dealing in dope. There's definitely no way that becomes important later. The chapter ends with another montage showing that as a made man, life got infinitely better for Vito as he was able to make some serious cash for Falcone and even move into a nice house in Greenfield that was foreshadowed earlier in the game. But after that, the chapter concludes, and with that, I want to take a moment to thank you for watching this far into the video. I will also ask you to hold on to your butts because after this mission, the game starts pressing the gas pedal down and we start ramping up the intensity of the plot in addition to Vito's actions with the mob. The next chapter is about the short-lived war between the Clemente and Falcone families. After they attacked Balls and Beans, Falcone wants to hit back and hit fucking hard. This mission is a personal highlight of the game in my opinion, outside of like the ending of the game. This mission sees Vito and Joe tasked with making their way into the Empire Arms Hotel. They have a guy on the inside who can let them in through the laundry area in the basement. From there, they will grab disguises and head up to plant a bomb in a conference room that is being used by Clemente and his capos. Before the conversation in Joe's apartment, we saw that Marty was outside waiting, and that's because he's our wheelman. Marty drives us over to the hotel and has to wait in the parking garage to take off once we detonate the explosive. After a slight delay, we make it inside the laundry and get on our disguises. We grab our tools and get into character and start to make our way upstairs, but first, a surprise appearance from fucking Henry Tomasino. That's right, the guy from earlier who got Vito involved in the gas stamps that got him sent to prison. He seemingly doesn't recognize Mario and Luigi over here, and the boys make their way up to the conference room. Lucky for them, the two men get asked to clean up a certain mess that's inside the conference room, so that's going to make this job a little bit easier. The bloodstains we're cleaning up no doubt came from that poor guy we saw earlier with Henry. We enter the room, clean the mess, and quickly plant the bomb. We plant it under the table, and we have the wire feeding to a hole cut in the window that we will connect to a detonator that will be on the window washing platform. Fucking convoluted plan in my opinion, and I seriously don't know how nobody would notice the odd wiring going from the table to the window, but hey, whatever. The two men make it to the roof to get to the window washing platform, and unfortunately, Clemente's men are up there already, and they open fire. I'm not sure if it's possible to avoid combat here with a stealth route, but as soon as you walk outside the door, they're pretty much right there and notice you instantly. The gunfight is pretty intense with fire coming from both high and low. Once you clear out the enemies, Joe and Vito take control of the window washing platform and take it down to the conference room to connect the detonator. Again, somehow nobody in this room notices what Joe is doing at the window. Nobody even looks if you pay attention to all the guys in the room. Vito is in character trying to wipe the window, but seriously, everyone in that room deserved to get blown up for having not noticed the hole in the window that he was connecting a wire through. Now it's time to detonate the bomb, but there's a slight problem as the bomb goes off prematurely. But, like, we can all agree that it doesn't matter if the payload went off prematurely, right? The bomb was still in the room when it went off, so it still counts, right? Yes, I'm still talking about bombs here, shut up. The men descend down after collecting themselves to see if the bomb went off properly and did the job. However, small caveat is that Clemente was in the bathroom and survived the initial attack. This then kicks off a fun combat sequence as Joe and Vito must now actively shoot their way through the hotel and make it to Clemente. And I gotta say, every time Joe says the line,
"Back me up, Vito."
It's fucking go time. Nobody can stop the two of us. Everyone in this hotel is gonna fucking die. We bust through two sets of doors, and this one guy freezes like a Praetorian guard in Star Wars The Last Jedi, and rightfully so, Joe tosses him out the window for reminding us of that horrible fight choreography. A couple Molotovs get thrown, and this sets off the sprinklers, which just adds to the fun in my opinion. We almost take out a cleaning lady thinking more guys were coming out of the elevator, and then work our way down to the basement section of the gunfight as it's the most intense of the level. Lots of constant fire at you from different angles, and sometimes those angles make cover obsolete and you'll die anyways. There's lots of catwalks, so there's guys above you and at eye level. Luckily, there's lots of ammo to be picked up, so you can just keep using the classic Tommy gun. Once you deal with the last of Clemente's guys, you make your way outside to the garage, and unfortunately, they killed Marty. I don't know if he got out of the car and tried to take Clemente out, or if they just assumed he was the wheelman and popped him anyways. Regardless, Joe is pissed off, and the boys follow in hot pursuit with Joe hanging out the window firing away. The chase goes on for I believe a random amount of time before you take them out, but for me they turned a corner and drove right into another car. Vito thinks they're done, but Joe isn't convinced, so he steps out and just mag dumps the rest of the Tommy gun into Clemente. Joe and Vito make it back to his apartment, and Joe is torn up about Marty, and he gets angry when Eddie says it was just a small price to pay.
Small price? That's my fucking friend you're talking about.
Hey, Joe, don't go taking it out on me. It was your idea. Nobody forced the kid to go.
That's right, the death of Marty has a greater impact in the story than the death of Vito's own mother. You know how earlier I wish I said Vito had maybe been affected by the death of his mother, and the writers had it set in for a little bit, maybe be acknowledged a little more so the viewers know how much it meant to Vito? Well, instead they do that with Joe and the death of Marty. It's not unnecessary, like it's a good reason for Joe to be upset. I'm perfectly fine with shading in the character of Joe Barbaro so that he ain't some one-dimensional wise guy. I just find it kind of strange from a writing perspective because in the next part they could have just switched Vito and Joe and made the timing a little bit different to make it make sense. I say that because the next part sees Vito get a phone call late at night from a bar. The bartender named Leon calls Vito because Joe has gone off the deep end and now he's absolutely wasted. He's full full-on Jim Leahy level drunk, but specifically that one episode where Leahy starts just randomly firing inside the trailer. Joe is simply just following the shit winds when firing off the gun in the bar, and that goes about as well as you think. Yeah, he just straight up kills Leon accidentally, and Vito's reaction is just great.
What the fuck
Is wrong with you? I was just...
You were just what? Shut your fucking mouth and get your drunk ass outside.
All right, I'm going.
So now you have to load Randers into the car and also the dead body of Leon. You're also using Leon's car, so naturally there's only one way to deal with both the vehicle and the body. You take it down to Brewski's junkyard and toss it into the massive industrial compactor, and you gotta treat Leon like he's the fucking shredder.
Oops.
Really, between this mission and the back half of the attack on the greasers, this is the game just showing you its open world elements to make money. Like, the next game in the series is almost completely open world, but in this game they were flirting with the idea. The next chapter is another important story moment. The chapter is entitled A Friend of Ours, and it opens with Vito getting a knock at his front door, and he opens it up to see none other than Henry Tomasino standing there with his hat in hand. He wishes to go out for a drink and talk with Vito. Tomasino explains that since the thing went down with Clemente at the hotel, he's pretty much out of work. Thus, he's going to Vito hoping he would be able to put in a good word for him with Falcone and possibly getting working for the family. They also have this really fun exchange over the details of the hotel attack.
So you sure you weren't there that day? You're positive?
Let's put it this way. Me and Joe were out taking care of something for our boss that day. That's all I'm gonna say.
You know what? It don't matter anyway. But do me a favor, would you?
Yeah, sure.
Next time, get a better disguise than a phony fucking mustache. I saw you two pricks from a mile away.
You know what? Can we please not talk about this right now? Forever again?
Don't worry about it. You did what you had to do.
I mean, I kind of figured that Henry knew that was them at the hotel, but he does also have this, like, you know, sense of self-preservation, so he didn't interfere with them, and as you see, he did end up surviving, so power to him. Vito brings Henry over to the Maltese Falcon, and he begins talking with Eddie. Now that Clemente is dead, there appears to be more rumblings between families, but this time with the Vinci family. Eddie tells Vito that they could be making a move on the Falcone family. Not a good sign, though. Eddie strongly believes that they need to act first, but they need some more information doing so. Luckily, that's where Henry can come in handy. Henry is introduced to Eddie, and Eddie asks Henry if he has any knowledge of a possible plan to attack Falcone from Clemente or even Vinci. Henry recalls a conversation he overheard between Luca Guarino and Leo Galante. Guarino was apparently trying to convince Galante and the Vinci family to go after Falcone, saying he was dealing in shady business, specifically dealing in dope, which, as mentioned by Vinci earlier, is a big no-no. That's one of his main principles. Hopefully he's not like Salieri for the first game and also goes and breaks that rule himself. So that's enough for Eddie to call for a preemptive strike, but we're not talking about drone striking a wedding or anything. Eddie tasks Henry with taking out Leo Galante. This way they can take out a key figure in the Vinci family and also have Henry prove himself to the Falcone family. What this does is now kick off a frantic sequence where you have to hurry up and make it to Leo's before Henry does so you can warn him and get him out of there. The problem is, as you may have noticed, you drove Henry's car there and he took that when he left, so you're going to lose a little bit of time no matter what trying to steal a vehicle. You then have to race against the clock in the top corner to make it to Leo's beautiful mansion, and of fucking course he lives in Highbrook, high up on the hill, so your car will lose a tremendous amount of speed going up the hill, and typically by this time you're very close to running out of time, so it becomes a little bit nerve-wracking. You make it to Leo's and barge in, and Leo's very confused of what's going on. He's still in his pajamas and he can't make sense of what Vito is saying. Leo invites Vito upstairs to talk, and he reveals that he knows exactly what Guarino was talking about when it comes to selling drugs. He knows that Clemente sold drugs, as does Carlo Falcone. He believes that Guarino was trying to get Falcone taken out to make their drug dealing schemes more profitable with the main competition out of the way. For the story, that's a pretty big bombshell. That certainly changes a lot of things going forward. Now Vito is freaking out because Leo has no sense of urgency and they're running out of time as Henry arrives with some hired muscle. You can hide from Henry, you can even try to sneak around the house and get away from him, but you're likely to be found, where Henry is understandably pissed with Vito because this certainly complicates things for everyone. Vito can't stand to watch what's going to happen, so Henry lets him step out of the room before he finishes the job. Vito sits outside for what seems like a while before he hears the gun go off, with Henry leaving, saying he owes him. You turn and look into the room and see fucking Leo Galante still alive. Honestly, I was never actually worried they were going to kill Leo here, because as soon as you could tell Vito was waiting for a while, you knew nothing was going to happen. Because like, who takes that long to go through with a hit, especially between two guys that most likely never really knew each other? Obviously, Leo was able to convince Henry not to shoot him. But now, since Leo is still alive, you must take him to the train station, because the agreement with Henry was that he would leave town for good in exchange for, you know, not being killed. Leo plans to settle his affairs and then take the train over to Lost Heaven, the location from the first game. You drive to the train station, drop off Leo, and say your goodbyes, and the conversation they have on the way there is pretty neat. I'll include some, snippets from it.
What are you gonna do now?
I'm gonna disappear. Let things run their course. Gonna take the first train to Lost Heaven. Make a few phone calls, settle my affairs. Then I'm gonna head for the airport. I'm gonna go someplace warm. This time tomorrow, I'm gonna be sitting on a beach somewhere, sipping one of them fruity drinks with the umbrella in them. One thing's for sure. Carlo wants me dead, and sticking around here is like buying a one-way ticket to the morgue.
Isn't that a little drastic?
No, I've been meaning to retire anyway. When you get to be my age, Vito, then all this squabbling starts to seem a little pointless. Frank's never gonna change. He's a brawler. Nowadays, he just listens to the young hotheads because they tell him what he wants to hear. If he wants to be some kind of wise guy sheriff and go after Carlo, then he can do it without me. I'm just sorry I got you into this mess. All right, here it is. Thanks for everything, Vito. Just promise me that you're never gonna be as stupid as you were today, risking your neck like this just to buy an old man a few more years.
When Vito arrives back home at Villa Scaletta, he finds his sister crying on the front step. She's crying over her husband, who we now know is a man named Eric Riley. She's crying because he's been a complete shitbag to her recently due to his excessive drinking, and she's convinced he's out cheating on her. Francesca asks Vito to go and talk to him and set him straight so that he doesn't betray her anymore. Vito also asks the completely valid question if Eric has hit her before, and she isn't direct with it, but admits he's done it a few times. So now Vito is pissed, and he heads over to the apartment that belongs to one of Eric's friends, where Francesca believes he might be. You walk upstairs to find a bustling party going on, and wouldn't you know it, Eric is in the kitchen, booze in hand and broad in the other. He's getting all up in her kitchen, but Vito puts a stop to it. You then get a super satisfying beatdown of Eric for cheating and treating your sister like shit. He scampers off after you threaten to kill him if he hits Francesca again, and he goes home right to apologize. When Vito gets home, Francesca calls you to say that he apologized for everything and will be a better man, but then she chastises Vito for assaulting Eric and threatening to kill him. Francesca says she doesn't know Vito anymore, saying he's changed while being a part of this life of organized crime, and she tells him not to talk to her ever again, and you don't. That's the last you see of your sister for the rest of the game. I'll say it once, I'll say it again, this ain't no Tommy Angelo story, folks. Family is not the paramount theme in this game. Besides Vito's dad, nobody really has that big of an influence in the story. Francesca is a non-issue who is just dealing with the debt that the father had created. The mom was relevant earlier in the story, but she doesn't matter clearly. She wanted Vito to live a normal and safe life, and he immediately went against that. Sure, he went down to the docks for her, and that's how he met Derek, but Derek is connected to these same families Vito ends up getting involved with anyways. He was literally at the initiation ceremony. The reason they have you meet and work with Derek only becomes important just before the end of the game, but we'll get there. After that emotional phone call with Francesca, you then end the chapter by going to bed, only psych, it's not the end of the chapter, but Vito's house is instead intact in the middle of the night by the Irish mob. This group of guys are being led by a man named Mickey Desmond. He and the boys are actually getting revenge on Vito for murdering the previous boss, Brian O'Neill. I guess when Vito said in that voiceover that nobody knew who killed O'Neill, he just meant the guards, because despite Vito being the only other guy in the room, somehow the Irish mob on the outside found out. They toss in Molotovs and a few guys enter the building to take you out. You can actually subdue one guy in the house and take his gun to fight back and try and take the rest out, but it's more fun in my opinion to just dive out the window and run in your underwear for your life. You have to run out of sight and make it to Joe's. I think it's also really funny to steal a car in your underwear, especially once you make it to Joe's and he makes a comment about your attire.
Oh, you barbecuing in your underwears?
Yeah. Can I come in?
Oh, yeah, of course. I'll fix you a drink.
Joe then lets Vito in, shows off some new decor, and then from there he makes a few calls, and miraculously he knows exactly where to go to get some sweet revenge. We just waltz right in and catch them by surprise, and Vito comes in like a total badass too.
I told you. I chased him, but I lost. The coward ran away. But I'll find him, and when I do...
You were the one who ran away, asshole.
Fuck. You. You've got some balls.
Yes, I do.
You're fucking dead!
There's honestly not many guys left, so after you deal with the dudes inside the bar, including the fucking bartender, you then have to chase down Desmond in a car, and I just ran him right over. Vito has now gotten his revenge and can move forward, but he's still upset over the fact that he lost his house and everything else. So Joe gives him the keys to Marty's old apartment because he's trying to sell it for Marty's mom, and Vito can use it in the meantime. You arrive at Marty's apartment and head inside.
Fuck, this is creepy.
I agree, Vito. I agree. The next chapter, which is called Sea Gift, opens with a narration from Vito saying that Eddie was able to handle any issue with the cops stemming from the incident with the Irish. He also says that despite Henry failing to complete the hit on Leo Galante, he was still brought into the family and became a partner of Joe and Vito. This chapter opens up with a phone call from Henry Tomasino telling Vito to meet him at Lincoln Park to discuss a big plan that he wants to cut Vito into. So you drive over to meet Henry in Lincoln Park, and Joe is there too, and this conversation is very interesting and important to the plot. In short, Henry explains that he reached out to some sources that he trusts and got some vital intel on Carlo Falcone. He got word that the reason he ordered Clemente to be killed was not just because he broke the cardinal rule and began selling dope, but because he was stealing away Falcone's own customers. So what Leo said earlier seems to be true. It does beg the question of who Henry had verified that with. Henry suggests that if Falcone can get away with dealing drugs openly, why can't they? So this whole mission is about procuring some heroin from the Chinese group known as the Tongs. The plan is for the guys to head down to a loan shark and take out a loan of 35 grand and use that to purchase a fuck ton of heroin to sell at a high markup. They plan to keep it to themselves and away from Falcone, and, you know, we all saw how well that worked out for Paulie in the last game. The problem is that we have to get this done today, or else the deal will be passed up and the Tongs will just find somebody else, according to Henry. So we take off, and here is where we screech to a halt for a second because, dear God, what the fuck is that? Yeah, I unfortunately suffered this glitch or bug in the game, and this was something I legitimately never experienced before in this game, specifically the remaster. The frame rate plummeted, and this white, pink, shiny blob would just take over the environment and the screen. At times, I could just push through it thinking, you know, it would pass, as sometimes when I got close to it, it would kind of, you know, recede a little bit, but it got so bad that I had to restart the game and restart the mission from a checkpoint. Luckily, because I pushed through to the meeting with Bruno, I just had to restart from there. I'll be honest, the main reason I had to restart the game was just so I could include a better clip of this piece of dialogue, which is one of the best ever in the series.
You go to church?
Yeah, and I can understand why you don't. They use big words, there's no hookers, and the food's lousy.
Yeah, that pretty much sums it up.
Jeez, I ain't been there since 45.
What? That time your mother made you go to confession?
Yeah, that time she smacked me for checking out some chick's school. Man, God rest his soul.
How about you, Joe? How long's it been?
Easter,
Ah, that ain't too bad.
1941.
I take that back then. You're going straight to hell.
What, you just figuring that out now?
Don't worry, I'll save seats for the boaties.
So unfortunately, that did affect my playthrough, and it was rather disappointing to see, and it will affect the final score at the end of the video. But back to the story, we meet Bruno, and he's initially uneasy about giving you the money you need, but Henry convinces him to loan them the 35 grand with the condition they will pay Bruno back 55 grand by Friday and repay the debt. But now that we have the money, we just head over to Chinatown to meet with the Tongs at the Sea Gift warehouse, hence the name of the title. We exchange money for heroin, and things go smoothly. Or so we think.
Hello, gentlemen.
Fucking
I
setup.
think you have something for us. Drop the suitcases.
My shoes. Wait a minute, these guys ain't cops?
Kill the bastard! Shoot Vito!
Yeah, so you're attacked by some supposedly fake or crooked cops who ambush the deal. Luckily, Henry can tell who is and who isn't a cop, right? Hey, how does he know that? The not cops that attack you even have a secondary group waiting for you around the corner once you drive away from the warehouse. It's another great shootout level. Ever since the Wild Ones chapter, this game has been cranking up the intensity in each shootout, and I love it. Once you escape the attackers, you have to commit to selling the heroin you picked up, and luckily, Henry has some deals set up. We meet some guys and prepare to make our first deal, and Joe takes a hit of their spliff before heading inside, and when he comes back out, you can tell he's already feeling it. This begins another fun montage like we saw earlier to some fun and vibrant 50s music as we see that Henry, Vito, and Joe were very successful at selling the heroin, and we see they're enjoying themselves and making very good money, and they're driving around and having a good time and, getting the attention of the ladies, and of course sticking it to the people who won't pay up. Unfortunately, just like the chapter where Vito got out of jail, the audio glitched and kept looping over top of the next scene and is drowning out the actual dialogue, which is very important at this specific moment. Vito answers the phone while partying at Joe's with some ladies, and it's Henry on the phone. Luckily, with the power of subtitles, you can make out what he's saying over the music. The dialogue is very important here because he mentions that Falcone found out about the heroin deal and the subsequent drug deals made after that, and he's sending Eddie over to collect his cut of 60 grand, which fucks us because we were supposed to pay Bruno 55 grand. Henry wants to talk about the plan in person in Lincoln Park again, so Vito and Joe hop in the car and head over to the park.
Henry's different these days. Guy's got a real...
What the fuck's going on?
Shit, that's Henry. What the fuck are they hitting him with?
That's fucking right, the Tongs hacked Henry to death with fucking meat cleavers. They must have did that because they knew Henry's favorite movie was Cleaver. Prepare yourself, folks, because the game is about to be turned on its fucking head for the next few game-ending chapters, because Joe and Vito are flying into a rage and they follow Wong straight to his restaurant. I will point this out, Vito wouldn't change his life or his mother before or after she died, but he is about to ruin his own life because of Henry's death. Why do I say this? Because after they get to the Red Dragon restaurant, you two make the decision to just bust in like John Nada from They Live. The boys are all out of bubblegum and here to kick some ass, and the Tongs themselves are packing some fucking heat. One gunshot goes off and the whole place starts firing at Joe and Vito. It's honestly a fun and great shootout that feels unique inside this restaurant due to its design and layout. You got guys on the balconies, behind the bar, and around the corners. Also, if I haven't mentioned it already, the sound design for the guns is also pretty great, and the shootouts are better because of it.
Fuck are they all coming from?
You ain't so tough.
You're tunnel to China.
Two more to go. That's it.
You run through these guys and Joe's bloodlust isn't satiated just yet as he and Vito take the elevator down to where they know the Tongs are manufacturing and prepping the heroin. It's pretty clear we're going to end the whole operation. You go through the kitchens, you go through the drug packing area and take them out too. And oh, why don't you look at that, Timmy? It's a Chinese opium den. Joe and Vito take the final elevator down and confront Wong in his office, and Wong drops a bombshell.
What the fuck do you think we want?
We want to know why you had our friend killed. We also want the money you took from him.
I had no choice. Your friend was a government informer.
What the fuck are you talking about?
A contact inside the Federal Bureau of Narcotics told me that Henry Tomasino passed them information about our deal.
That's a fucking lie!
Whoa, whoa, whoa. You saying Henry was a rat?
Yes, but not anymore.
That's bullshit. Makes no sense. And I suppose you had nothing to do with the little stick-up after we closed the deal with you either, right?
You think we would take such a stupid risk and destroy our own factory? That was just another reason to get rid of you. We had problems with you from the very beginning.
Oh, yeah? Well, all your problems are just about over, pal. So where's our money?
It's not here anymore.
What?
That's right, the money is gone, and to top it all off, Wong reveals that Henry was a rat for the Federal Bureau of Narcotics, and that's why he was killed. Joe and Vito are surprised and hurt by this revelation. The whole point is very interesting for how it's executed. Now, in my research for this game, I read up on how the writer for this game, Daniel Vavra, wanted to make it clear that Falcone had actually threw Henry under the bus for making that deal in the first place, or it was at least supposed to be left up for interpretation. However, there are some moments leading up to this that kind of gives the feeling that maybe he was a rat. When he found out about Falcone dealing drugs, it was through some unnamed trusted sources. Perhaps they were federal agents, or it was just what Leo mentioned to him earlier. Henry also knew quite a lot about heroin and the whole drug dealing business, so perhaps he received some information that way as well. The writer, Daniel Vavra, left the studio before the game's completion due to some creative disagreements with the head of 2K. They had made some cuts and changes to his Mafia 2 plans and script. They also denied his script for Mafia 3, and this would cause him to leave in 2009 when this game was released in 2010. So now, like I said before, it seems like it's left up to interpretation. You can either believe Henry was set up since, I mean, he was going to benefit from the drug dealing in the first place, and he justified it by doing it because, you know, Falcone and Clemente were doing it too. Or you can believe that he was a rat and he possibly could have been looking to take the Tongs down, or possibly even get Vito and Joe in serious trouble for dealing drugs to possibly get back at them for killing Clemente and throwing his life into disarray. Unfortunately, due to the issues behind the scenes, the pivotal moment is handled awkwardly and indirectly. You're not quite sure what to believe. But what you do know is that some serious shit is definitely going to fall out from this, considering Joe and Vito just went rogue and wiped out a serious chunk of the Tongs, and you still don't have Bruno's money. They also make the great point that this will most likely start a war between the Tongs and the Falcone family. Joe and Vito know they're fucked, but they'll deal with it tomorrow, and this is how the chapter ends. The next morning, Vito wakes up to a phone call from Joe because they gotta work on getting that money for Bruno. I guess Falcone and Eddie Scarpa didn't know that Vito and Joe were a part of the problem with Henry because Eddie has given Vito and Joe a job to do with a big payout. And as soon as you see that red car, you know exactly what's up. Joe and Vito have been tasked with taking out someone in Greenfield on behalf of a family from another city. Joe and Vito have an envelope with clear instructions to deliver a message and then kill the man in his front yard. Obviously, I'm not going to beat around the bush too much. We all know what this is. It's time to see the other perspective on the hit on Tommy Angelo, our protagonist from the first game. On the way to Angelo's, Vito makes a great point that if this guy ratted out the family to the feds, then he most likely has some form of protection, but then Joe just disregards it. I will say this. I think it's incredibly dumb for a guy who's going into witness protection to go from one major city with a huge mob influence to the same type of city. He essentially went from Chicago to New York. Everybody knows if you're trying to get away in witness protection, you go to Saskatchewan or Norway. The boys pull up, pop off, and get back in the car, and turns out that Vito was right because not only do the cops immediately come after you, but so do federal agents as the wanted level jumps to the max. You can tell they're federal agents, A, by the way they're dressed, and B, subtitles. Once you're able to evade the police, Joe gives you your cut of the money from the job because he almost forgot to mention he got paid in advance. So that was weird. You then split up and begin looking for more work to get that money for Bruno. Vito decides to go see Derek. Derek happens to need your help with something pretty big, but right as he's about to get into explaining, Steve enters the room talking about the fact that the workers, well, don't want to work. The dock workers are threatening to go on strike because Derek fired a guy for apparently faking being sick, so now he needs Vito's help with threatening the workers to get them back to work. You guys lock and load and walk over to the warehouse where the workers are to get the boys back to work, and the story is going to continue to unravel here as another major bombshell is dropped. Remember like an hour ago in the video where I said to remember that bit between Steve and Derek where they looked at each other when Vito said his name? Remember a little bit ago when I said that really only Vito's father has a real impact on the story, the only time the theme of family becomes important?
You fellas are really starting to piss me off.
There's no need for violence. Please, put it down. We don't want no trouble.
Don't look that way to me. Right now, looks like you got big trouble, don't you? Now, if you all don't want to start looking for new jobs, you'll be back to work in the next 10 minutes. You see, Vito, all they do is bitch and moan.
Vito? You're Scoletta's boy, ain't you? Your dad used to talk about you all the time. You look just like him. But what are you doing working for this bastard? After what he did to your old man?
Shut your fucking mouth right now. Don't listen to him, Vito. He's full of shit. Come on, let's go.
Full of shit, huh? That bastard killed your father, Vito.
What? They're just trying to get under your skin.
Derek?
Hey, stop pointing that gun
Why
at me.
don't you ask him how your dad drowned that night?
We seen him take a walk with Steve. And then Steve come back alone. And all wet.
Stop pointing that thing at me.
What the hell happened with my father, Derek?
Are you nuts or what? Who are you gonna trust, me or these now unemployed losers? We known each other for a long time, Vito. Think of all the things...
Why were you all wet, Steve? You dive in and try to save him?
Because he wouldn't stay
Keep
underwater.
your mouth shut! Vito, you swore an oath. I was there. Our loyalty to the family is greater than to our own families.
Tell that to my mother.
Should I kill him? No, not here. We'll settle things with him later.
Well, it turns out that Vito's father was killed by Derek, more specifically Steve though, which throws the whole story upside down. Because not only did Vito just fuck things up between Falcone and the Tongs, he's now certainly going to fuck things up between himself and the Commission of Families. Like throughout the game, Vito just did nothing but trash the guy, calling him a drunk and a deadbeat at one point, so they don't really build up to this reveal properly. Really, you can argue that his dad taking out the loan that got the family in debt is a big reason in why Vito chose organized crime, because it paid better and would help pay off the loan faster. And now, he's going to throw it all away in one fell swoop, because now we're going to kill Steve and Derek. The actual mission itself is fun though, I'll admit. Killing Steve is easy. He's just out in the open. You can pop him like any regular NPC enemy. Derek, on the other hand, total bitch. Derek runs all the way back to the main building and heads upstairs, and when you follow him inside, they shut the door behind you and lock you in. Derek then starts hurling Molotov cocktails, and they do way more damage than they should when they land far away from Vito. I will admit though, I did die a handful of times here because there are other enemies that will come to support Derek and fire at Vito, and that'll keep you in cover while the Molotovs are being thrown at you. The enemies themselves will also try to flank you just like in the previous game, so it adds a degree of difficulty, but overall it's very fun. Once you take out these supporting enemies, you can make your way upstairs, though for me it kind of glitched and Derek just kept hurling cocktails at the stairs, so no matter what I had to run through the fire. Once you get up to the top floor, you take Derek out with a few shots. Then once you kill Derek, you can enter his office and take the huge stack of cash on his desk, and that is going to be around the amount you need to pay your half of Bruno's money. You grab the money and get away from yet another bridge Vito has now burned. The game will then direct you to rob stores or crush cars over at Brewski's junkyard to make up the remaining cash necessary. Once you get the money you need, you head over to Joe's apartment to combine the money. However though, he's not home, and even after Vito leaves to get something to eat and comes back a few hours later, Joe is still not home, so understandably, Vito is worried. So Vito heads over to the Maltese Falcon to see if he's there, but you only find Eddie, where he asks about the death of Henry Tomasino. Vito is playing coy about being involved with Henry Tomasino, and Eddie explains that Falcone allegedly told Henry that dope dealing isn't allowed, like we don't already know that Falcone is dealing in dope. Eddie then insists that the Tongs double-crossed Henry and killed him, but because two unknown assailants went and massacred half of them in the restaurant, now the Tongs are threatening both Vinci and Falcone because they don't know who did it exactly, so now it's dragging everybody into a potential all-out war in Empire Bay. Luckily though, Falcone is currently out of town, but when he gets back, shit is going to get real. We go see Giuseppe and he tells us that Joe was around looking for some work when some of Vinci's guys came and took him for a chat. Vito then drives over to the Mona Lisa restaurant, which I assume is the home base for the Vinci family, much like how Freddy's was for Clemente or the Maltese Falcon for Falcone. Vito then enters the restaurant and has two wise guys immediately pointing guns at him. They tell him that Mr. Vinci isn't happy with him and Joe, and they also need Vito to come with them. Vito doesn't want to at first, but then he is attacked from behind and gets knocked out. Vito wakes up beside Joe, with them both being held by their wrists so Vinci can question them. So Vito lies to Vinci and says they had nothing to do with it, and Vinci doesn't like that answer, so he leaves, and it's all but certain the boys are going to be left to die. So, not wanting to lay down and just take it, the guys work together to get down and take out the one guy keeping watch, and I mean, Joe just beats the fuck out of him. And with that, now it's time to dig the grave a little bit deeper, as now that both Joe and Vito are free, they have to fight their way out of the building. This now means we have to kill Vinci's guys and certainly make problems worse. Friendly reminder that Leo, the one guy that Vito has been loyal to the whole game besides Joe, is a member of the Vinci family, so it's not going to be a good look on Vito here. This shootout in the building is another highlight for the combat in the game. The revolver is a fucking hand cannon if you didn't know. The best part of this whole mission is towards the end when you make it down to the lobby, and it's a proper fucking shootout, something to make the Cray twins proud. I will point out that I like the graphical work done on the destruction of the pillars that you can use for cover. It adds to the chaos watching the cover slowly erode from different angles with the gunfire coming back at you. Once you survive and exit the building, you then have to get Joe to El Greco. When you arrive at his house, Greco says that one of Falcone's guys is already in there, and it's Tony Balls who was attacked by someone, and it looks like he's never going to walk again. He also takes this time to make a great point that this stuff is bound to happen in their line of work, and he wonders if they ever get tired of all the bloodshed. Joe gives Vito his half of the money, and then Vito beelines it straight over to Bruno to repay the debt, where another huge revelation occurs when Bruno asks for Vito's name, and when he says Scaletta, he mentions that he loaned money to a specific Scaletta once before, but that man could not pay it off. His wife had to. So yeah, the debt from the start of the game was loaned out by none other than this fucking guy, and he says the usual sleazy thing like, I didn't make either of you take the money.
So like, I'll just say this, would it not have made more sense for the writers to pencil in Bruno as the guy that got Vito's dad killed, you know, instead of Derek? They don't ever make it clear as to why Derek had Antonio Scaletta killed, but for Bruno here, it makes perfect sense. Antonio Scaletta didn't pay the debt that he accrued, and it was just final notice time, and he was killed for it. Having Vito go scorched earth on the loan shark that basically got him into this mess earlier in the game would make a lot more sense to me than killing Derek. Remember, one of the reasons I believe Vito leans towards that life of crime is simply because it was a faster way to pay off the debt, and then he just stuck with it. Also, Bruno is clearly connected to these same families as Derek, so if you wanted Vito to burn those bridges with the commission, I feel like that same outcome would happen if he killed Bruno. That hypothetical situation with Bruno would make more sense to me than Vito abruptly turning on Derek and Steve for the sake of his dead dad, which up until that point, you didn't really think it was going to be a huge deal in the story, which is why I emphasized it so much in this video to make that connection clear.
So here it is, our last chapter of the game entitled Per Aspera ad Astra, which when translated from Latin to English translates to Through Hardships to the Stars. Vito gets a call from Eddie Scarpa, who tells him to meet Don Carlo Falcone at his planetarium as he wants to speak with Vito. Eddie also tells you to not bring a piece this time. As you go to leave, this then cuts into another scene where Vito is walking down the street and he gets stopped by a man in a trench coat who you initially think is going to be with Falcone, but instead, it's Leo Galante. He's back in town and he does not look happy, and what the fuck is up with your eyes, Leo?
Last chance to look at me, Hector.
Leo here is pissed as he knows Vito had something to do with the attack against the Tongs. In the car with us is the head of the Chinese mob, Mr. Chu. He's actually in charge, not Mr. Wong from earlier. Leo says that Vito has done fucked up, but since he's done good for Leo in the past, both when they were in prison together, but more specifically when he wanted to save his life from being whacked earlier, Leo decides to help out Vito one last time. He's arranged this final task for him to rectify his mistakes. The deal is simple. Head over to the planetarium like normal and kill Falcone. This will square things with the Tongs and hopefully ease tensions with Vinci. That game-ending feeling is in the air with the heavy rain downpouring over us as we head to the planetarium. Just like in the first game, there's some henchmen waiting for us, but Vito takes them out instead, and this kicks off the rush to get to Falcone. It's just near endless henchmen in trench coats coming after you, but honestly, it's a lot of fun. In particular, the one part as you're moving indoors, you can pick up the Tommy gun if you didn't already have one, and there's just endless amounts of ammo to pick up from the guys you're killing, and you can just mow down the enemies as they come towards you, and it makes you feel like a total badass. Vito fights through various groups of Falcone's henchmen that try to stop him, and eventually you come face to face with Don Carlo Falcone, and he has one small surprise for you.
This is who they send? This is an insult. What'd they tell you, Vito? Take care of me and all's forgiven? You really think they're just gonna let you walk after everything you did? Then again, chumps like you never do think about the big picture. But your buddy Joe understands. Don't you, Joe?
What the fuck is this?
I could ask you the same question.
Loyalty's a funny thing, huh, Vito? No such thing as friendship in this business. Didn't your old pal Leo teach you that while you're sucking his cock back in the can? You're just a fucking pawn, Vito. That's all you ever were. When are you gonna realize that?
Joe, you just gotta trust me.
You think I give a shit about the feds? Or those tired old fucks on the commission? They're using you, Vito. Just like Clemente used you. Just like I used you. Just like that rat fuck Henry used you. You vouched for that piece of shit. Brought him into my house. And now, you dumb fuck, you're gonna pay for it. Now, Joe.
Hey, if you're gonna pull that trigger, do it already.
What are you waiting for?
Vito, let's shoot this cocksucker.
Remember what we talked
On
about,
tree.
Joe? You're gonna throw all that away.
However, though, Falcone did not take into account the level of loyalty between Joe and Vito, because Joe just says fuck that noise and he teams up with Vito one more time to fight against Falcone. It's during this climactic moment that I wish to discuss my final gripe with the narrative in this game. Mafia 2 just does not have a clear sense of antagonist to root against the whole game, and its always changing antagonist characters just aren't present enough. Like, the story is just going through the motions of Vito's life in organized crime. Things are always shifting and changing as the story progresses, and when you think Clemente is going to be the main antagonist, he dies. Maybe you'll fight the Chinese mob, and they're mostly dead. Okay. What about Frank Vinci? He kidnapped and beat you and Joe and was going to leave you for dead, and you responded to that by murdering loads of his men, but no, he's not the antagonist. Then the one Don in the city you thought maybe is an actual ally turns against you because you went off the deep end after Henry got killed, who, need I remind you, was involved in the scheme that got Vito sent to prison. I don't understand why they were so loyal to Henry. Also, he might have been a rat. Also, all we did was sell heroin together. Now, the point they could be trying to make is that everybody is going to use you and fuck you over to benefit themselves in this world of organized crime, but in my opinion, that just isn't as compelling of a story. It is a very valid point to make, don't get me wrong, but it's just not as strong as a motivation in my eyes because it's not properly built up, like the classic dynamic of having an antagonist you work towards defeating. Look at the first game, for example. You spent the whole time battling against the Morello crew and building up the intensity and animosity towards Morello, despite the fact you already knew he died. And after he died, Salieri turning into a form of antagonist meant a lot from a narrative perspective because of his presence in the story throughout the game and how he portrayed himself as a respectful man with some form of principle. Sam turning on you was also heartbreaking because of how integral he was to the story and also the time you spent together, so it made for a great ending. They could have done the same thing in this game with Joe Barbaro, but I'm glad they didn't do that because, for one, that would just be repeating the same plot point from the first game, but also because Joe fucking rules. Falcone is just a name mentioned for a good part of this game, and he isn't nearly as present enough to be a strong antagonist when he does become important to the plot. Vito's motivation at first in killing him is only because Leo told him to for his own sake to try and rectify his attack on the Tongs. Obviously, you can also believe that Falcone was just going to kill him anyways. It does point towards that, so Vito is going to have to defend himself anyways, but his whole motivation for going up there with the intention to kill Falcone is just because Leo told him to. And depending on what story you buy into, you're doing all of this for a character who was a rat, which is one of the worst things you can do according to these games. I mentioned the problems with the antagonist in the game because that plays a huge part in making a story matter. Knowing there's a looming presence of a serious bad guy to defeat makes a story engaging and takes it to a different level. Hell, even the third game has a very clear antagonist in Sal Marcano from the early part of the game, and it gives you a damn good reason to want revenge against him. Imagine Harry Potter, but instead of Voldemort being a looming presence that you're building up towards, you just end up fighting different versions of the same villain every year like it's some sort of anime. Or how about Star Wars, for example? Toppling a galaxy-wide autocratic regime is a strong enough story on its own, but having a character like Darth Vader, or the Emperor for that matter, gives it another edge and you want to see them defeated in some fashion. The problems with the antagonist is probably my most polarizing opinion I have of this game, so tell me what you think of the game's story in the comments. Eventually you injure Falcone and he's laying there bleeding out and he curses you out one final time before you put him down.
You know something, Carlo? For the last 10 years, all I done was kill. I killed for my country. I killed for my family. I killed anybody that got in my way. But this one's for me. Fuck you. Fucking prick.
As you're walking out of the planetarium, Joe mentions that Falcone offered to make him a capo and give him his own crew, which is everything Joe ever wanted, and he gave it up to help Vito one last time. The real reason, though?
Remember that $5 you owe me?
So, here's the final scene. I feel like even if you have not played Mafia 2, you have seen this clip online.
All right, then. Looks like a celebration is in order. Come on, let's head to the cat house.
Sounds good to me.
Come with me, Vito. There's more we need to talk about.
All right, we'll see you over there.
All right. So what's the big secret? Hey, what the hell's going on? Where they taking Joe?
Sorry, kid. Joe wasn't part of our deal.
And fuck, man, there you have it. One of the biggest gut punch endings in video game history, in my opinion. The one character that has always had your back all game long, and really the only character Vito had unwavering loyalty to, is killed in the end. While I've been sitting here complaining about the theme of family and how that has been cast aside and how the motivations of the character are always changing but not necessarily evolving, I've also complained about how the game lacks a presence of a strong antagonist to fight against, but one thing I will never complain about is Joe fucking Barbaro. He's seriously one of the best supporting characters in gaming history, in my opinion. I'm glad he died off screen because I wouldn't be able to handle it. Joe is just a fun character who's been rock solid as a friend for Vito the whole time, and he's capable in every gunfight, and he just has multiple moments that stick out. Not to mention the vocal performance from Robert Costanzo is done well and helped make Joe endearing to the fans. Despite all that I complained about, I still really do enjoy this game. It's fun to play, and Vito is a fun character to play as, and he makes for a memorable protagonist, even if his motivations are rather unclear or always changing. I'm just fucking surprised he lived through it all, to be honest with you. Mafia 2 is still fun to play, and Vito is a fun character to play as, and he makes for a memorable protagonist, even if his motivation as a character is always changing. So we sit here now at the end of the video, and I just feel confident in saying that the game is not as great as I remember, still really good, but not great. If I had to give the game a score out of 10, it's a solid 7 out of 10. If you asked me about like 10 years ago, I'd probably say like 8 to an 8.5 out of 10, but with my renewed sense of understanding and a new look on the story of the game, things just aren't the same for me. Part of that is also due to the graphics not being the best for a remaster, also because of the game-breaking glitches I encountered. Please, for the love of God, do not think I hate this game just because of my many gripes. I still think the main characters are great. I think the vibe and aesthetic it goes for with this 1940s/1950s setting is done well, and I love when a game can nail a historical setting. I really enjoyed the World War II opening. I just wish it could have been longer. Like, I wish we got to fight up until Vito got injured and sent home. I think the gunplay is good for this style of game, the sound design is excellent, and of course the voice acting is strong too. I've heaped loads of praise towards Robert Costanzo and his portrayal of Joe Barbaro, but some others that would stand out would obviously be Rick Pasqualone, who is so good as Vito in this game, and he makes the character stand out. Pasqualone has a good career of voice roles under his belt. Some of them I found quite surprising, like I didn't know he was the voice of Doctor Strange in Marvel's Midnight Suns, or that he voiced Robert De Niro in Celebrity Deathmatch, if anybody remembers that. Another few names that deserve recognition would be Frank Ashmore, who voiced Leo Galante, and lastly Sonny Marinelli, who voiced Henry Tomasino. The voice cast for this game is really good. Everybody clocked in to work, but I do think it's funnier when you look at the additional voices and the people who voice minor small roles with only a few lines. People like Nolan North, Troy Baker, Brian Bloom, and of course Steven the Shower Rapist Blum all have small roles in the game that fascinate me. So that's just about it for me on this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you don't hate me for my takes on the story of this game. It's probably the first time in this channel my mind has been changed when playing a game, and I hope at least it generates a lot of discussion. So comment down below what you think of this game and its story. Do you agree with what I have to say? Do you think I'm a fucking idiot? Let me know down below. Also tell me if you prefer this or the definitive version of the first game. Let me know. Obviously, next up will be Mafia 3. That's the only game besides the new one I have not played before making these videos. I've been playing Mafia 3 while writing and recording videos for Mafia 1 and 2, and honestly, it's not as bad as I was expecting. Beyond that, I also have some plans for a video for October/Halloween specifically, and then I also have a video planned for early December. I'm excited to do those ones as well. So with that being said, if you're watching to this point in the video, that's first of all amazing. Thank you so much, but please remember to click like and subscribe as it helps in motivating me to make new content. Last but not least, I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I will see you in the next video on Mafia 3.